Okay. I'm getting an error with Rumble. Let me check the other two. YouTube. Okay, it looks like YouTube. I'm getting an error with Rumble. Let me check the other two. Might be going. I'm hearing myself. That might be Odyssey. YouTube. Yes, that's Odyssey. Okay, now. What's wrong with Rumble? Why can't I start on Rumble? Where is it? Oh, come on. I just had the Rumble window. Here it is. Livestream on Rumble. It says waiting on Livestream. Let me double check the stream key on that. Okay. Start. Nope. Okay, it was working on Rumble before. I don't know what's messing up now, but if you want to go over to Odyssey, the links to both are below, and the Odyssey link is working. I might have to figure out Rumble, but how's everyone doing today? After the false starts we've had. I'm seeing a black screen on Rumble. See, Rumble is supposed to be really good about live streaming. And now it says ended. Okay, it's not going to work on Rumble. After I had it working, it's not working now. So how you been, Sid?
I've been all right.
And SPC said he has a debate topic for us, unless there's something else you want to talk about.
Yeah, what was the debate topic?
He hasn't posted it yet.
Okay.
Because it has, hang on, I have this up. Because I actually had it where I could show the chat. Nope, I'm still seeing my, now it's showing my looping intro thing. I mean, it looked like it was working and then it said ending. I don't know. It's just been one of those months when nothing's worked right, you know?
Yeah, it happens.
I think I'm getting Discord bleeps from you, Sid, so if you could
okay.
turn off your desktop audio.
All right.
No, I don't have too much to talk about. I pretty much got it out of my system in our false start, and then in this morning's video about the Diceware passwords. I might switch over this weekend to Bitwarden. I really don't like LastPass's new interface. I don't know why they did that. Especially since we're wanting answers about a lot of other stuff from them, you know what I mean? I thought Chris said he was going to be available tonight. I heard a ding. Where is the ding? Was that you that the ding said?
Oh yeah, that was a text I got. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think I've covered abortion pretty thoroughly.
Do you want to, I guess, try and talk about the whole Ticketmaster debacle?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, I guess the background is, well, I mean, I'm not sure if you've heard of the whole, the story around the Taylor Swift concert and how Ticketmaster has been thoroughly criticized for sort of fucking things up on that front.
Well, why don't you catch us up on that?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, my understanding is a bit sparse too. But from what I understand is because of that whole debacle, people are calling for antitrust action against Ticketmaster, calling it a monopoly and all that. And I mean, this is not the first time. Ticketmaster has been one of the most hated companies on the face of the earth for quite a while, because people hate their obscene fees. Sometimes which are apparently as much as almost as much as the tickets themselves.
Well, I mean, I guess my question would be is what's stopping competition? I know that the music industry is far from a free market in this country. It's all been cartelized and they've got all the protectionism in place. But what is it specifically about Ticketmaster?
Well, aside from the fees, there's the whole controversy. I think this month's AMA question that I just answered was sort of about that. The whole thing around like, scalpers. Apparently, people and Ticketmaster does this themselves. They withhold a certain amount of tickets from the open market, from the box office specifically, to be sold on the resale market where they can mark up the price. Apparently, I mean that's just what I've heard. Now, I'm not saying I.
Well, I mean, in general, scalpers has always meant someone who's gotten in early, bought up a whole bunch of tickets, and then they sell them to people outside on their way in for a marked up price. But I mean, that's just a free market thing. I mean, if you buy something, it's yours. And if it's transferable, you can give it to someone, you can sell it to them.
Right.
And if they don't want anyone doing that, they can do like an airline ticket and make it non-transferable. And then you put their name on it and everything and make sure that it's them.
Yeah. I think you made a you made a quickie like some years back on the topic of price gouging.
Yep.
Which sort of like, I guess defending it in a sense because it sort of well, first of all, it makes it accessible at a point where it might not be. Also, it's a signal that that more of the said thing is needed. I think it's been a while since I watched it.
Yeah, I mean it's supply and demand, really. I mean, if someone does the only definition of gouging that makes sense is when someone sets their price, above that amount, but then they'll immediately get punished by the market. But I don't know. With Ticketmaster, my question is, what's their stopping competitors?
Yeah, I mean, they have some competitors like StubHub and SeatGeek and all that.
Well, then why don't more people buy from them if they don't like Ticketmaster?
Yeah. I mean, again, my knowledge about this is a bit sparse.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's a case where, because like the record labels, as I said, are heavily cartelized in this country, and if it's the case where, Ticketmaster has some kind of sweetheart deal with them, that would be a different matter. But
yeah. All right, excuse me a sec. I think I should probably transfer somewhere quieter.
All right. Yeah, the basic thing on abortion is, yes, you have the right to life, you have the right to live, but not at anyone else's expense, unless they voluntarily agree to it. And that, especially if that occurs to anything, it applies to your own life processes. Someone actually taking food and energy from your body, so that they can live and grow. So that's the part I don't really understand. How, it's like when people say abortion violates the NAP, it's like they're just looking at the fetus's right, but not at the mother's. I mean, her body is her property, and if someone is on her property and she doesn't want them there, she can evict them from it, right? She can kick them off. I don't know how you can take any other position and be a consistent libertarian. Because you can't sign up to be someone else's slave. I mean, we covered that from the start. All right, did the chat stop, or do I have to reload it again? Let me hit. Say live chat instead of top chat. All right, I guess it's just, let's see, is anyone on Odyssey? No. The Odyssey link is working. I don't know why Rumble isn't. I don't know what's the matter with Rumble. Maybe it was the false start that messed everything up. By the way, there is a typo in the links. That was me. I typed 22 instead of 23, but the link still works. So if you want to watch on Odyssey, you can go over there. And I'll keep an eye on the chat. And this should be the Rumble chat, except we're not streaming on Rumble. Yeah, I don't know why that failed. I double checked the stream key. I recopied it, and it said the stream was starting, and then it said the stream ended, and that was it. It was done. I don't know. Well, and I mean, there is a sense in which a mother is a trustee of a child. So she can't just neglect it. You can't just neglect a baby or something like that. But you can give it up. You're not slave to your child. You can put it up for adoption or whatever. And so if the baby's still in the womb, you take the baby out of the womb. If the baby lives, if it's late term enough, okay, then someone can adopt the baby. But if it's a 10-week-old fetus and it's not going to live, yeah, it's just the thing. There was that 2-on-2 debate we had a long time ago with Shiny. So you can look for that 2x2 on abortion, I think is what it's called. I might just do like I did on that one live stream and go through news stories. Five ex-police officers face murder charges over motorist's death. It'd be nice to see some accountability there. Black motorist in Memphis, Tennessee, died 3 days after a traffic stop spiraled into a fatal physical attack. Let's see what happened with that. Nichols endured a 3-minute attack. He was a human pinata for those police officers, the family attorney said. Not only was it violent, it was savage. The police officers were black, too.
Okay, I'm back.
All right, welcome back. I was just looking through news stories, looking for something to talk about. Hello, I envy you. California is still trying to figure out how to get water to people after record amounts of rain and flooding.
Yep. That's California for you.
Notice how the press rarely mentioned the officers were black. I don't know. That was the first I was hearing of it. I just looked it up on... I've got the DuckDuckGo Newswire going on here. The agency warned Californians to still conserve their water use. So only governments. What was that Milton Friedman said? Put government in charge of the Sahara Desert, and before too long you'll have a shortage of sand.
Yeah.
Man shot dead after dog steps on hunting rifle?
Oh,
How
God.
would that cause a rifle to go off?
I guess the only other major thing that comes to mind right now is the scandal around the Congressman George Santos. He basically lied his way into Congress, but I mean, that's sort of par for the course when it comes to politicians, isn't it?
Yeah, but what did he do?
I mean, he lied. He basically lied about his resume. Claimed to do a bunch of things he didn't do.
Well, Joe Biden did that. I mean,
and now people are calling for him to resign from Congress.
says a German Shepherd stepped on the trigger in the back seat, but why was like the safety off and everything? And why were they going to have been pointed at him? I mean, that was dumb. Unless that's completely misreported, that's dumb. Oh, and they're sending another 30 some odd tanks to Ukraine. Yep. The Russians are losing. They've been on the run for 10 months and they've been retreating right and left, but we still need billions more dollars and a lot more tanks and everything else. And people wonder why I don't believe a word our government says regarding war. George Santos, who claimed he was Jewish, wrote a Facebook comment in 2011 joking about Hitler, the Jews, and black people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's behind the paywall.
Hello?
Whoa, hello.
Sorry, I
Hold on,
forgot.
whoa. Let me turn you down. You are way high. In fact, I think you're hot on your end because I hear clipping.
Oh. Sorry, I forgot you're an hour ahead of me, so I thought it wasn't until 8 o'clock.
Yeah, you are definitely hot on your side. Can you turn your mic levels down?
Okay.
All right, now I'm going to turn you back up slightly. Oh man, that was piercing right in my headphones. Yeah, I envy you. It's my ears. How do you think mine are? Jeez. How you been, Chris?
Okay.
So, we were just discussing George Santos, and
Yeah, I was reading up on it a bit, and then my ear started bleeding, and
sorry.
it's
Is that
okay.
better?
Yeah, you're fine now.
Okay. George Santos, who's he again? I keep forgetting.
he's a congressman who lied about basically everything, and somehow got elected. None of it, luckily for him, none of it came out.
I don't think you're actually narrowing it down by saying
that.
Yeah, that's not helping. It's
well,
like
the
from
guy
that.
He lied about being, I think, about being Jewish, and
Yeah, sorry, chat. This is
I think you're still a bit hot. I'm still hearing clipping on your side. Take it down a little bit more.
He also lied about working at Goldman Sachs at one point.
Yeah, I'm sorry. These are brand new. These are brand new headphones I got. I got them for Christmas, so they're brand new.
Yeah. Either that or just back off your mic. Either that or just back off your mic a bit.
My mic's pretty far away from my mouth, so.
Okay, well, I mean, it is picking you up really well.
I'm lowering the output volume, or is that the input volume?
That might be input because I'm not really hearing a difference. You're still clipping.
Okay, what about this?
Oh, that's much better.
Okay. Still too loud?
You're a bit quiet now, but that's fine.
Okay, how about this?
That'll be fine.
Okay, yeah, I have it to 80, so.
Yeah. George Santos reportedly claimed to be a model featured in Vogue.
Yeah.
And he met all the Victoria's Secret models, all of them, every single one.
Yeah, he lied and still got elected. I mean, so?
It's looking like these are just weird things to lie about, though.
To be fair, though, he's not the only politician that lies.
He lied about his education as well.
He claimed he survived an assassination attempt.
He confessed to committing check fraud, but failed to appear in court, leaving the case unresolved.
He said that his mother was in the South Tower on 9/11, and she wasn't. She hadn't even been in the U.S. until 2003.
And he lied about his charity work.
He claimed to own $1 million apartment in Brazil, when he's actually living with his sister at her apartment in Queens, where she's allegedly facing eviction for $40,000 in unpaid rent. Well, there's all sorts of accusations that, like, his campaign fund was basically a money laundering fund.
I mean, yeah, that's wrong for him to do, but Again, name one senator or representative that hasn't done that.
I don't know many who claim to have been a model for Vogue. That's just a weird one.
Well, to be fair, most of them aren't that very pretty to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most politicians are old.
Well, I mean, a lot of them didn't even look good when they were young. Like,
here's the one on his Jewish heritage. Claimed his maternal grandparents fled Ukraine during World War II. But he's not Jewish. He identifies as Jew-ish. Jew-ish.
Dash in the middle.
Oh, so it's like I'm a little Jewish.
He identifies as a Jew.
Man, what is it with people and identity these days?
Just attention, I think.
Yeah. In all honesty, and I've heard people say this, like if your only identity is like your gender or your religion or whatever, I think you need to get some personality.
You're starting to clip again. You might have to watch your levels.
Yeah, maybe you need some personality, people, because if that's the only thing that identifies you, you're not a very interesting person.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, apparently there's a new scandal of companies selling firearm converters to make them fully automatic. I'm sure that's as good as the bump stock or the reset trigger.
Yeah, speaking of guns, Joe Biden's throwing a fit because Joe Biden and many governors are throwing a fit because a lot of courts and citizens and all that are basically saying they're not going to enforce the gun laws.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just with Illinois.
Yeah, something like 80% of Illinois, and it was another state too. It was either a governor or a senator or some Democrat like that was whining about why the sheriffs weren't going to enforce his gun laws. Oh no, this is rare breed triggers. Yep. Merrick Garland will do everything in his power to protect the American people from gun violence and hold accountable those that flood our community with illegal guns. It's rare breed triggers. They make force reset triggers. The FRT-15, yep, the force reset trigger. We talked about that on the podcast, and I think one or two other times as well.
Yeah.
But you see, that's all that gets covered in the news media. Oh, they're selling converters to make them fully automatic. No, they're not. They're just force reset triggers. But, you know, the news media doesn't even try to get the correct information. They're just going to take Merrick Garland's word for it.
Yep. There you go. You know, Shane, earlier, Shane, you mentioned about how all the it was Sid who mentioned all the politicians are old. You know, maybe there should be, just like how, like, they said they have to have a limit on how old you can be before you can run for office. I think there needs to be a cap of the age.
Yep. I don't know. Would you really want Congress to be full of millennials?
Yeah, true. That's true, too.
Just get the boomers out. They've had their turn.
Yeah. I saw several documentaries all about how bad the boomer generation was. Let's just put it best. The boomers are basically, you know, what happens when you spoil people.
Yep.
14-year-old in custody after gun found in Kannapolis High School. That's kind of up the road from me. I mean, that used to be a normal thing for teens to have guns in schools. Back when there were no school shootings, imagine that.
I think they're, here's a proposition I have for the politicians. We'll give up the Second Amendment rights under 3 conditions. 1, you have to dismantle the United States military. 2, you have to dismantle the Secret Service. And 3, you must pass a law that says no politician can hire any form of armed security at all. Yeah, because that's the elephant in the room that anti-gun people don't want to acknowledge is who's going to be enforcing these gun rules? People with guns.
Oh, and they're also doing the freak out over the Earth's core. No, people, the Earth's core has not stopped spinning.
The Earth's core, really
well, the Earth's, no, this is like mainstream media stuff that they're fear-mongering about, like CNN and all them. The Earth's core spins at a different rate than the crust, which is the part we're on. But it does this weird precession thing, so it makes a polar orbit, and then precesses around it basically at right angles. And if you look at it, you see something, and then when it flips over, it's kind of like, how Mars makes that little retrograde part in its orbit. It's just kind of that way from our point of view. Mars is not actually slowing down and going backwards and then going forwards again. But if you look at the core spinning in retrograde relative to our point of view of it, it does this every 70 years. It's a 70-year cycle it does it on. So it's, yeah.
And let me guess, is the mainstream media blaming Man-Bear Pig for it?
I don't know. They're talking about all sorts of disasters.
I'm sorry, South Park, but just because Man-Bear Pig is real does not mean Al Gore was right.
Yeah.
That actually would have been a much funnier episode where it's proven Man-Bear Pig is real and Al Gore's going around saying, "See, I told you he was real. I was super serial and he's gonna kill us all." And Man-Bear Pig's like, No. I'm not here to kill you guys. I'm just here. Don't let him listen to you, kids. He's going to kill you. I'm not going to kill you. Because seriously, according to Al Gore, Florida and parts of California would be underwater by now, according to what he said. But I agree with what you said a long time ago. I think Man-Bear Pig works as a much better allegory for the national debt.
Yeah.
Because
it really does.
Yeah.
Did the chat stop, or am I going to have to reload it again? Oh, no, there it's going.
I like how one documentary I saw about the boomer generation said, what do people think about the boomer generation? And they said, basically, they're making us pay for a party that they got to attend, but we didn't.
Yep. That's pretty much it. Yeah. And now they want us to pay for their retirement.
Yep.
Even though they're the richest age demographic in the country.
Oh, yeah. Fun fact, when I was in high school, I saw a teacher one time complaining, about how one of her students, because apparently they were involved in a political class and all that, and she was complaining that one of her students was criticizing Medicare and all that, and she's like, well, my parents worked all their lives and all that. This kid is very selfish for not thinking about that. And I'm just thinking, lady, what about my generation? When I reach your grandparents' age, there's going to be nothing for me.
Oh, yeah.
If anything, I'll be poor when I'm older, because...
Yeah, SBC, don't really worry about convincing the socialists, because you're probably not going to be able to do it for the sake of the people in the middle, so that they don't get taken in by it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's the only reason why you should have these debates. It's for the people that are listening and are still on the fence,
Mm. Yeah, in Illinois, it really looks like you've got Chicago wanting to do all this gun ban, and then maybe a couple of counties around it. Cook County and a couple of counties around it, and then the whole rest of the state is saying, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, people are Yeah, a lot of people are forgetting that Illinois is more than just Chicago. In fact, people fail to realize Illinois is mostly boonies, if I recall correctly. I've driven through there a couple times. Most of Illinois is boonies. It's rural.
Yeah, Pip, it's a literal Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, which actually might speak to how many people are like jam-packed into Chicago, because it's one of the more populated states. Yet most of it is.
I mean, states like
rural and,
I mean, states like California, Illinois, and to a lesser extent New York are perfectly good examples of why you don't want direct democracy, because basically, if we were to have the direct democracy, all of the major decisions of Illinois will be determined by one city, Chicago.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so Chicago people don't like something, well, sorry for Illinois farmers, but we're making the decision for that.
That's how it usually goes.
Yep.
I'm getting some miscellaneous sounds coming from one of you.
Yeah, it sounds like someone's banging a hammer or something.
There's definitely creaking coming from your end, Chris. I don't know what that would be.
It could be my chair. My chair, I need to replace it.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Chairs weren't so expensive.
Yeah.
They're putting in the new air conditioner Monday, and that's going to be another. I mean, it's going to pay for itself, but
Air conditioner, it's winter.
Well, it's an air conditioner and a heat pump, but you know. Earth's mysterious iron ball in its center may have just stopped and flipped.
Oh, great. Does this mean we're going to have to do that thing like they did in that crappy movie, The Core?
I guess. We're not going to notice anything. No, this is not a thing.
Yeah.
Three of the nation's best pizza shops are in North Carolina. Okay, well, there's the hard-hitting news coverage.
North Carolina?
Yeah, that's what it says.
Oh. I would assume
Gino D's Pizza in Charlotte, Fahrenheit Pizza and Brewhouse in Asheville, and Village Pizza in Nags Head.
Yeah.
That's what
Also,
the Charlotte Observer says.
Is the ethnic? How big is the ethnic Italian population over there?
I mean, we got Italians here. It's not like it is in New York, where they have like, you know, they have like Little Italy and Italian second town. Then they have, you know, Chinatown, and then they have, you know, the Jewish section and stuff like that. We've got Italians and Jews and Asians and things like that, but they're just kind of we're just kind of spread around all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't like segregate themselves, which is ironic. Oh, Captain Pipsqueak writing our news copy. Breaking news. This totally normal and expected geological process is happening, and you should probably be scared of it, even though it probably won't affect your day-to-day at all. News at 11. Didn't you hate it when you'd hear them do stuff like that? Could something in your home kill you in seconds? We'll tell you about it tonight at 11. What? You're going to withhold that?
Yeah, John Stossel a long time ago, when he was still on ABC, did a special like that, where it's like, here's a whole bunch of articles that you may have heard, and like one of them was, I forgot who it was, but it was the woman he used to work alongside with, and she was going, did you know there's a new type of flesh-eating bacteria out there? You'd be much more likely to listen instead if we told you, oh yeah, there's a rare obscure form of the strep bacteria that can cause a flesh-eating disease, but it's treatable and it's rarely fatal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they'll say something like that, and so you tune in for it, and you listen, and they don't cover it, and they cover this, and they cover that. It's like, now the weather. It's like, well, aren't they going to tell me about things going to kill me? Okay, now sports. Then after sports. And in our final story today, and they tell you about this incredibly rare thing that probably won't kill you.
Yeah.
Just to make you sit through the rest of the broadcast.
I've heard a lot of doctors say they hate stuff like that. They also hate TV shows like Monsters Inside Me and House and all that, because they get all these patients coming in, saying, I'm having, all these pain and symptoms and none of the standard treatments are working. I must have this rare disease. It's like, no, it could be many other things,
Oh, here's something else they're freaking out. Apparently, NVIDIA has an AI update. They're like, if I'm doing a live stream like this, how I'm looking at the camera right now, even if I'm, because a lot of times you're just like looking at this, I'm looking over the chat, I'm looking at, other stuff. And this will make it so that it looks like my eyes are always looking at the camera. And, this reporter is saying it's an unsettling feature that had me shouting and screaming the first time I saw it in real time. It's like, what?
Also, speaking of environmentalism, that Swedish girl, I forgot her name, Greta something. I heard she got into some trouble recently.
Yeah, I don't know the deets on that.
Yeah, she staged something.
Yeah, she got arrested by cops in Germany.
Oh yeah, I remember that, the fake arrest. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The whole Anita Sarkeesian thing.
Yep.
Honestly, no, wait, it wasn't Sarkeesian. Who was it? Who was it that fake getting arrested? Oh, it was AOC. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me. Yeah, when I first saw Greta Thunberg's video, you know what I said? I said, what should be required? She should have to perform that speech in the Central African Republic in front of a bunch of little kids who are suffering and dying from starvation and lack of medical equipment. Yeah. That's one thing I want to ask. How come all the environmentalists are coming from rich, privileged nations and they're not coming from the third world? That, according to
environmentalists... It's interesting how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, who, according to the environmentalists, are going to be the people who are going to be most affected by it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like how, socialists are all, we're all about the working class, and about the working class. The working class is going to rise up, and the working class, by and large, doesn't support them.
Yeah.
Yeah, when
the socialist revolution does occur, they're going to be wondering, hey, why are you routing us for execution? Because you're bourgeois.
Yeah, I saw this funny meme where it said it was like target audience versus actual audience, and it was like for a couple of video games. For Pokemon, target audience is young children, actual audience is adults. Call of Duty, target audience is adults, actual audience is young children. Socialism, target audience is blue collar workers, actual audience is wealthy college students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god, here's another one. News alert, a common nail salon tool may cause DNA damage and mutations in human cells, research finds. Oh, you mean like everything else that exists?
Yeah. Yeah. News flash, everything is full of chemicals.
Oh, it's because they use the UV light to dry the nails.
Yeah.
Well, okay, did you go outside on the way to the nail salon in a sunny day? That probably did more for you.
Yep. Well, you missed my thing. Yeah, that joke is that newsflash. Everything has chemicals in them.
Yeah, how many products in your local store are full of chemicals? Join us at 11.
Yeah. That's the funny thing about the anti-chemical people. It's like, people, everything is a chemical.
Yeah.
I always like it when there's something on a shelf that says contains no chemicals. It's like, oh wow, that's amazing. This thing has absolutely no baryonic matter in it whatsoever, yet it behaves like a normal liquid. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Who won the Nobel Prize for this?
Yeah. I hate those people that are like that, and they're like, and they're like, it's like, does this thing have any preservatives? Those are bad. Yeah, how dare we make it so food can last days in the fridge instead of rotting overnight, even in the fridge?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, oh, are these chickens antibiotics free? Antibiotics free? Oh, why? Well, because that's bad. Oh, yeah. So, and ironically, a lot of people say antibiotics are cruel to animals, but I've actually seen some veterinarian videos that have actually said that that the hardest part is treating, organic farm creatures because you can't use antibiotics on them.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Like there was a hoof trimmer guy who was treating an infection on a cow foot, and he said, "Unfortunately, I can't apply topical antibiotics because this is an organic farm, so all I can do is keep it clean and spray it."
Yep.
Yeah.
The antibiotics
I
aren't
love
bad,
how
people.
whenever they're people use like chemicals as a stand-in for any substance they seem they deem is unnatural or they think is bad for you.
And
When in reality,
and I think
everything has chemicals.
we brought this up in one live stream. The reason why antibiotics are becoming less effective is not because germs are mutating to become super powerful and evil. Rather, it's because the FDA won't allow us to update our antibiotics.
Well, that's the thing. They're not becoming superbugs. They're just mutating ways around the mechanisms that the antibiotics attack them. So you need novel new antibiotics to take them. But it won't be like superbugs that like get, it's just like they adapt to their environment. That's what organisms do.
And I mean, I hate it. Like when there's always that medical thriller where it's like this virus is immune to antibodies. It can't be contained and all that. And I'm like, then that virus never should make it out the front door the moment it infects a person.
Yep.
People fail to realize in the world of microbiology, it's possible to be too effective.
Well, how are you defining effective?
Yeah.
Effective for a virus infecting you would be having absolutely nothing wrong with you, or maybe even making you feel better and more energetic so you can go out and do things and spread it around to other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's demonstrated. We have bacteria and viruses in our bodies right now all the time, and they literally have no effect on us because they've mutated to the point where they know how to interact with our body without causing too much damage that it triggers an immune response.
Yep.
Yeah.
Check out these two news articles. They're like right one above the other on my phone. Fox Business. GDP report reveals ominous Great Depression warning sign not seen since 1932. CNBC. U.S. GDP rose 2.9% in the fourth quarter, more than expected. Okay, same report. There's just two different. I wonder what this ominous warning sign is.
If we may pivot for a bit, so you've I think one of my favorite videos of yours is your how to argue for tariffs video. And I actually didn't know the extent of how bad U.S. tariffs were until I saw this infographic. There's this excellent website called the Visual Capitalist. They make all sorts of great infographics related to mostly to economics, but also other stuff. And um, it ranks each country by how many harmful tariffs they have in place. And the United States is number one by a county mile. They have like nearly 5,000 harmful tariffs.
Wow.
Which is like more than double the next on the list, which is just amazing. Like this is like, keep in mind, these are like tariffs that are actively hurting the economy, as the infographic says. So
well, and I've talked about weird things on the podcast, like Gibson fighting the tariffs on the wood for their guitars and stuff like that.
Yeah, I might actually link this graphic because it's pretty great somewhere, wherever I can.
Okay, yeah, put it in the live stream thing, and I'll pin it in the comment.
Yeah.
Over on Discord. GDP is bunk because it counts government spending, yeah? And the guy who created GDP, Simon Kuznets, said not to do that. Of course, he also said not to use it as a measure of economic well-being, and here we are. No one commenting on Odyssey yet. I was kind of hoping to see a few Rumblers, but something messed up and Rumble ended the stream for some reason, so I guess we'll try and add them next month. Hopefully it won't come down to the wire like this.
Yeah, here it is. I just put it in there.
Okay. Oh, they're talking about retail investments. They dropped 26.7%. Of course, yeah, things were just getting crazy there. People were like building entire neighborhoods. I had to like get an electrician in just to fix a few outlets. It took like 5 weeks to do it. There were no electricians available because they were all wiring up these new neighborhoods, just house after house after house after house. So they say residential investment fell off a cliff, dropping 26.7%, or it was a regression to the mean. I mean, it's probably a good thing, and I know Jerome Powell isn't very popular right now, but they might see his pulling back on assets as a good thing. King Charles III sues Elon Musk for not paying him rent?
What?
Yeah, let's see what this is.
I've not heard of that one, but that's absolutely bizarre.
The Crown Estate, which manages the properties of King Charles III, is suing Twitter, owned by Elon Musk, for alleged non-payment of rent for its London headquarters.
Funny thing about King Charles III, I saw this one funny parody of Queen Elizabeth, you know, where she doesn't want to die, and her doctor saying, "I understand, Your Majesty, but we all die and all that. It's an adventure." And she's like, "Oh no, I'm not afraid of the afterlife and all that. The reason I don't want to die is because if I die, my son will take over."
The property is owned by the Duchy of Lancaster, which is owned by Charles III. So, well, that is just crazy over there.
Mm-hmm.
How convoluted it is to have the government over there. At least in China, it's very simple. If you exist, the government owns you. You know, they don't try to do this. And then up the king, and then he's also in control of this duchy, which is this part of this other thing which owns this property that everyone's renting.
Yeah, British politics are pretty weird.
Yeah, I don't know why, like so many people sort of have a romanticized image of the monarchy. It's just outdated.
I don't understand it at all. But if you've met any Brits, they're pretty much all like that. Oh my God, the royal family, they're so wonderful.
I mean, like, I don't have much against the queen, but her son doesn't have the inscrutability of her.
I mean, it was kind of. I mean, I've heard from some people from insider sources. Like, there's insider sources from people saying that almost right from the get go, you can kind of tell, especially the way he interacts with people, that King Charles doesn't even want to be on the throne. I mean, we kind of saw that the moment, you know, when he took office, and the first thing he had to do was sign something, and he was complaining about the pen not working.
Yeah.
Although to his defense, that is the most frustrating thing in the world. You need to write something seriously, and you need a pen, and for the love of God, every single pen you find doesn't work.
From Yahoo, humanity may reach singularity within just 7 years. Is it just me, or is the singularity itself a dumb concept?
While we're on the topic of Elon Musk, he's also You may have heard he's also gotten a bit of criticism for censoring on Twitter. I guess at the behest of India's ruling party, he's also censored a documentary, I think, critical of India's prime minister.
Oh, I didn't hear about that one.
Yeah. Well,
I will say I will say this. You know, it was the worst. You know, it was one of the biggest fails to try to discredit Elon Musk was when someone said Elon Musk, his dad was owned a diamond mine in apartheid South Africa. And it's like, I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it show that Elon's dad, supported the apartheid government. So I did a little research, and guess what? Elon's dad did not support the apartheid government. In fact, he was actually a part of a group of South African businessmen that were against the apartheid government because it was interfering with their business.
Well, he was estranged from them anyway, wasn't he? He didn't really get any money from them.
Yeah, that's another thing too. A lot of people are saying, well, he only got rich because his parents got rich, even though, and again, when I did the research, he was basically estranged from them after he graduated high school, basically.
Yeah, and he also worked his way through college and all that.
Yeah.
But you gotta remember, Twitter is like this big, confusing company, as the journalists behind the Twitter files are finding out as they try to go through and search for this stuff. And it was like, I think it was the Quartering got kicked off of Twitter recently, and someone was complaining about it, and Elon was like, this is the first I've heard about it. I'll have to look into it. So it's not like he himself is running the entire website on his own.
I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that even before Elon Musk bought it, Twitter was kind of doomed, because I have heard that like Twitter was basically so poorly disorganized, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's like when people when they try, criticizing the Twitter files because they don't want to admit that every single bit of it is true. They're saying like, well, why are they hiding things? Why don't they release all the documents? It's like, do you think that they just stuck their hand in a file cabinet, came up with this big folder of stuff, and then they went through going, okay, we'll show that. No, we won't show that. No, I mean, it is all so much stuff in so many different places with so much different access and different types of logins and all of these different places that you can't even really, you can sort of do a search for it, but there's no real consistency in things like search terms. And so you have to think about alternative search terms to go through it. And yeah, it's crazy stuff.
It's kind of like, it's kind of like when John Stossel would often interview politicians about regulations and all that, and the politicians often criticize and say, well, why are you criticizing a rule when you barely even read through the entire thing? And then he points out, because the rule you passed is like over 700 pages long. It can cover a football field.
Well, and also, I don't think that you should have to read a whole bill before voting against it, because if you run into one unconstitutional thing, you stop and you go, nope, I'm against it.
Yeah.
If you're going to vote for it, it's a different matter. Pass the Read the Bills Act. And the One Subject at a Time Act, that'll help too.
Yeah.
Rand Paul and, well, I think last time it was Justin Amash, but I don't think he's in the in office anymore. But they had been introducing the One Subject at a Time Act, and so I hope they'll do it again. So I'll see if I can find links to that.
That happens all the time. It's called earmarks, It's a common strategy, if Congress is passing, a bill called the Save the Babies Act, it's going to be like, okay, so I read through the Save the Babies Act, and here's what I found. Okay, what is it? I found a mark there saying that the government will donate, a couple $1,000s to the family of this one senator. What does that have to do with saving the babies? Well, you don't want to save the babies, Mr. President?
As I've always said, if they ever pass the Cute Puppies and Rainbows Act, head for the hills.
Yeah. I still remember that really video you did a long time ago. When the internet was still young, the Constitution Act, and you went through the Red River Relief Act, which was supposed to provide aid to areas that were affected by a flood, and there was just all this crazy stuff in it, that had nothing to do with Red River, like importing polar bear parts from Canada.
Was my favorite.
Cutting spending to foreign, to peacekeeping operations in Bosnia.
supporting cheesemakers in Wisconsin. It was like dedicating a highway to a Texas politician and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. And ironically, even said one of the earmarks was actually taking money away from, a local disaster relief program that was in that area.
I mean, wouldn't it be fun though if you could do it the other way? You get one of these like big must-pass omnibus bills, and then like stick some libertarian things in there, like
yeah.
Any executive officer who violates anyone's constitutional rights shall be pilloried on the White House lawn, or something like that.
Oh, I know something. I'll put an earmark on it that says if nobody brings up, this sentence that I just wrote down here in the bill, the entire bill is invalid, and Congress cannot enforce anything on it. And then
this entire bill is valid. Plus, we repeal the DMCA or something.
Yeah. And if people try to enforce the act, I'll step in and say, nope, you can't do it because the bill is invalidated because I put a sentence there that if you didn't read it and you didn't bring it up in the procedure, that means you didn't read it.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair though, and I mean the thing is, it's not even like a secret or anything. Like many politicians openly admitted they often don't read most of the bill; they just skim it.
Well, they generally don't have time to because these bills are hundreds of pages long. And, there just literally aren't enough hours a day. If you did nothing else other than read the bill, you still wouldn't have enough time.
I mean, I remember seeing, there was an interview with some former politicians who were, in the House of Representatives and the Senate during the 9/11 incident, and they regretted passing the Patriot Act. And so many people, they were asked, well, why did you pass it if you regretted it? It's because, we were busy. There was all this craziness going on. The bill was so long, and our advisors were telling us, Mr. Senator or Mr. Representative, this is a matter of national security. If you do not approve of this bill, you are going to put the entirety of the United States at risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why, as much it is tempting to make fun of politicians, to be fair, I honestly believe, because I have seen videos of them, of the majority of the people in the Senate and Representatives, I think deep down they're generally good people. The problem is that, just like with police departments, the whole system is rotten, that it doesn't matter.
Because also power tends to corrupt people.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there are good politicians. There's actually legitimate, politicians that do want to get the spending out of control. They want to stop all these useless laws, and they want to repeal bad laws. But generally what happens is when they bring it up, they're basically told, yeah, Senator so-and-so, just go over there and just sit down. Let the big boys do the talking.
The problem is they can introduce a bill, but then they'll say, okay, well, we'll have this committee or subcommittee look at that. And of course, the committees are chaired by the party apparatchik who just never bring it forward, and it just dies.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that's actually how most bills, are killed. Is basically they're saying, okay, we'll approve it. It'll go into committee. Okay, remember committee. Never bring it up. Okay.
Yeah, it was brought up to committee, and it was referred to committee, and never brought up again.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one thing that the song "I'm Just a Bill," even though it's a catchy song, I have to criticize it for, is that it does not go into that whole stuff. It's way too simplistic,
Yeah. Well, it just goes over the process the Constitution lays out for it.
Yeah, but in practice, I
think the Drew Carey show did an expanded version of it about how. And then, someone bribes the senator, and then all this stuff.
Yeah, and then he goes to another senator who says, "Okay, I'll pass the bus must stop at train tracks bill, but only if you put something in it for me."
Yep.
Yeah. I still thinking about that bill, the red relief bill. Something makes me wonder. I wonder some of those earmarks and all that, they were just passed there just to see if anyone would read them. Because why the F would you need to import polar bear parts from Canada? I'm willing to bet that's what it was. It was probably just some representative or senator writing there, and his assistant was like, "Why did you write that there in the bill?" He's like, "I want to see if they'll read it."
No, I mean, I'm sure it was a boondoggle for someone.
Yeah.
Okay, so Popular Mechanics is talking about the singularity being AI generated translations that you don't have to fix or only make a couple of fixes on or something like that. It's like, how is that a singularity?
Well, how do we know we're not living in a simulation?
Yeah.
Yeah. That, yeah, aka yeah, the whole simulation conspiracy theory. That's the problem with a lot of, with the conspiracy theory, is that it's basically the evidence that we're living into a conspiracy is that you can't disprove it. Well, we can't prove it either, but you can't disprove it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why we have burden of proof, people, because here's the thing, you can't disprove a lot of things, but that doesn't mean they happen, I actually once had an interesting idea for a fan fiction for Indiana Jones, only it's about Indiana Jones's great grandson who goes on, and basically what he does is he debunks the events of Temple of Doom, revealing that the Thuggy actually had no legit magic at all, and everything they did was just smoke and mirrors. Now, a lot of people have pointed out, but it is established in other movies that that divine religion does exist, and Indiana Jones's great grandson has an explanation for that. It's like, listen, let's assume that the events of that the supposed Ark of the Covenant and all that was real. Just because God exists doesn't mean unicorns and leprechauns are real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, when you think about it, with the exception of the voodoo dolls, everything that Temple of Doom does, the Thuggy do, you can easily explain it. I mean, the Kali, that's just a magma pit. There's tons of stuff like that. And I mean, it is on.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Bangkok is on a mountain. Well, what about the tearing of the heart? It's called psychic surgery. It's actually a very common parlor trick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andy Kaufman fell for that.
Yep. And also the blood of the Kali. I think with the blood of the Kali, it's actually quite simple. It's probably a liquid that's containing a powerful, some type of powerful mind-altering drug that makes, the person affected by it open to suggestion. There's an actual drug like that that exists in real life. In fact, there's actually a scam that some criminal organizations do in the area where those drugs are, where they slip the drug into the person's drink, and then they say, okay, hand me all your money, and you're in such a euphoric state, you're like, okay, here's my wallet.
Well, like with the psychic surgery, a lot of that stuff is done in the Philippines. And so a lot of people think, oh, well, how, dumb are Filipinos for falling for that? And if you, I've talked to Filipinos on the internet about it, they're like, look, no one here believes that crap. They're scamming foreigners.
Yep.
Getting foreigners to pay, to come over to the Philippines for this psychic surgery. No one in the Philippines believes it, apparently.
Yep. I mean, yeah, generally, speaking, most people don't believe in that. Like, I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing with the Loch Ness Monster. If you actually go to Scotland and ask people who live in Loch Ness, almost all of them are going to say, yeah, Loch Ness Monster, it's a load of bull crap. I've been living here. I've lived here for many generations. We've gone searching. I've swam in the river. I've known people that have literally gone through the entire lake. They have never seen a monster.
Unless they own a business that stands to profit from the tourism, of course. Yeah.
I mean, if I recall correctly, they literally dragged sonar over Loch Ness, which would have detected any form of monster, even if it was hiding in the various caves, and they found nothing.
Well, it's not just that. To support a monster that big, you can't just support it on the tiny little fish that are in there. You need the tiny fish for bigger fish to feed, like the medium-sized fish, and then the larger fish, and then go up there to the Loch Ness Monster. They're just not enough to sustain it.
I mean, Penn and Teller's bullcrap brought that up, in that one episode they did about cryptozoology, where they had that one guy that debunked the Loch Ness Monster. He's like, just take a look at Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan is much bigger. It has access to the ocean, so a monster could theoretically go there. It's got much more biodiversity. It's got tons of food for a monster that size. Yet the biggest thing pulled out of Lake Michigan was an 8-foot sturgeon.
Of course, Doctor Who fans know that Nessie is really a Zygon robot.
Yeah.
And they just kind of, Unit knows about it, and they just kind of let it live there. Because it doesn't harm anything, and it doesn't eat anything.
I mean, here's another thing, that famous iconic symbol of the Loch Ness Monster, it was proven to be fake, The guy admitted
it was like a dinosaur neck on a toy boat or something.
Yeah, it was a toy. It was a dinosaur neck that was fashioned from balsa wood, and he glued it to a toy submarine.
Yeah. Pip says that sheriff's departments are better behaved and responsive to feedback than metropolitan city police. Well, I think county sheriff departments, at least most of the ones I'm aware of, they're elected, so they got to answer to the voters.
Yep. They're voted. If they do something crazy and stupid, they're gonna lose their jobs.
And so, if you've got a clearly unconstitutional thing like some kind of gun ban or something like that, and sheriff goes around and starts taking everyone's guns, and if it's an area where a lot of people have guns and they like their guns, he's not going to get reelected.
Yep.
And of course, the Democrats say they like the democratic process, but then as soon as someone uses it against them, oh no, that's horrible. They're not obeying the law.
I mean, they're already acting like the Supreme Court doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court is anti-democracy. Yeah, that's the whole point of it. Is to stop democracy when it violates our rights.
Actually, going back to I'm Just a Bill, I remember seeing a funny parody one time where it was where after the song's over, a member from the US Supreme Court shows up and says, "Hey Bill, what about our role in making bills into laws and upholding them?" And he's like, "Oh, you're the Supreme Court. Nobody cares about you." "Hey, where are you taking me? Where are you taking me? No, don't!" And then he screams loudly, and then the film ends with Bill lying on the floor. He's dead, and he has a twisted face of horror on his deceased face, and on his forehead is a giant stamp that's labeled unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's the whole point of the oath of office, is that every single point along the line, the legislators, the executive, which is where you get law enforcement and prosecutors, and then the judicial, they all swear that oath to the Constitution, so that if any of them think, no, this is a violation of the Constitution, they're duty bound not to enforce it.
Yep.
That's nullification.
Well, and I think you also pointed this out in your old video. If the politicians aren't doing their job, if nobody's doing their job, and there's a rule that's clearly unconstitutional, and nobody's doing their job and preventing it, then it's up to the people. The people have every right to say, you know what, this rule is unconstitutional. We're not following it. Go ahead, arrest us. We're going to battle it tooth and claw in court. We're not going to do it.
Yep.
I mean,
the gun bans aren't going to pass muster in the lower courts after Bruin.
Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, I remember reading somewhere, that basically said that even if the Civil Rights Act never was passed, Jim Crow laws would have ended naturally on their own anyway, because they were becoming harder and harder to enforce, because more people were coming up and saying, you know what, these Jim Crow laws, they're stupid and unconstitutional. We're not following them. And maybe the local legislators were going, yeah, we can't really do anything. I mean,
well, and a lot of times, like in the Scopes trial, where you weren't allowed to talk about evolution in school. Inherit the Wind is not supposed to be a historical recreation of it. It's a work of fiction that's loosely based on it. What actually happened was no one was enforcing law because, no, that law's stupid and dumb and it violates the First Amendment and no one's doing it. They had to look around to find John Scopes, who was willing to be the defendant, and, William Jennings Bryan, who was willing to prosecute it, just so they could go and test the law, and get it into court.
You brought up in Plessy versus Ferguson. That's actually what it was. Plessy was in on it. He knew he was going to get arrested. That it was organized right from the get-go to try to end the early Jim Crow laws by showing how ridiculous they were.
And it kind of backfired.
Yeah. Yeah, mainly because I mean, from what you said, it sounded like, that many people in the lower court did admit that, yeah, these Jim Crow laws are kind of stupid, they're unconstitutional, and look, we don't have to like, black people, but the fact of the matter is these laws are just going to interfere with, people's businesses. But it was racist and the higher up that said, no, 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 they have to discriminate.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you
That was
mentioned
all
that the only
the
reason.
civil rights movement was perfectly aware that it was not businesses that were doing this on their own.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing people fail to realize. It was many of the biggest opponents of the civil rights movement were, the big transportation companies, because it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare complying. They had to buy bigger vehicles. They had to establish, these those boarding, methods, which were a nightmare, and delayed,
Well,
the
because
buses and trains
it
moving.
wasn't just, you had to move to the back of the bus. You had to go outside of the bus and get back on that second door halfway down. So
Yep.
if they had a bus that didn't have that second door, they couldn't use it.
Yep. And not to mention, there were some drivers, who were legit racist, that would take the money of the blacks and just drive off, but that would piss off the
Well, yeah.
black people who
But
would say,
well, that's what happened to Rosa Parks the first time, because that was like
Yeah.
her second or third run-in with that driver.
yeah,
And so, like, on there, she's already paid for it. This is before the famous one where she sits down. This is like, I'm not sure how, like years earlier, I think. But he says, okay, now you have to get off the bus, get back onto the door halfway down to get in your seat. And as soon as she stepped off the bus, he drove off.
yeah. But even then, that practice was failing anyway, because, like I said, that was pissing off a lot of black people. And even before they did the bus boycott, there were a lot of blacks that were basically saying, oh yeah, that particular bus driver, don't take them. So that meant fewer buses. Yeah. So, like I said, it was a nightmare, and ironically, and you brought it up, the whole point of the civil rights movement, ironically, wasn't to bring civil rights. It was actually to end it, because, like you said, the Democrats said, okay, we'll approve of the bill, but private companies have to comply with it too, even though that's against the Constitution.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I found that story I was talking about earlier by The Intercept. Well, multiple places are covering it. It says Elon Musk pays to pressure from India to remove BBC doc critical of Modi. Officials from India's ruling right-wing party said American tech companies like Twitter and YouTube complied with demands to remove the documentary. Goes on. Twitter and YouTube censored a report critical of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in coordination with the government of India, according to a top Indian official. Officials called for big tech companies to take action against a BBC documentary exploring Modi's role in a genocidal 2002 massacre in the Indian state of Gujarat, which the officials deemed a propaganda piece. Yeah, that's the gist of it.
Yeah, but I mean, if government comes knocking on your door and say, hey, you'd better do this or not do this or whatever, it's not your fault. That's duress.
Yeah, yeah, to play the devil's advocate to a degree, that's actually one of the reasons why pre-Elon Musk Twitter did a lot of the stuff it did. It was, there were members, that were against, doing it, simply on principle grounds, but the government was basically saying, you don't do this, then you can kiss, your government protection goodbye.
Well, and they were also like, oh, you're going to stop all these Russian bots. And it's like, we're not seeing all that many Russian bots. Yeah, this is a Russian bot, this is a Russian bot. It's like, no, they're not Russian bots. They're legit users, and they just kept bullying them into submission.
Yeah,
And also with with a lot of the censorship stuff, a lot of them resisted like censoring and then kicking off entirely, Donald Trump, because they're like, okay, we don't like these things he's posting, but they don't violate any of our rules. So, well, you better make them violate them. And it just got to the point where they couldn't get anything else done, just because they were hearing from so many people in the government about how they have to censor this and that.
Yep.
Ding.
That's me again. Sorry.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm always worried when there's nothing in the chat. I don't know if it's just quiet or if it's messed up again.
To be fair, though, going back to what you just said, I mean, if the documentary is being funded by the BBC, then I'm not saying it's wrong, but given BBC's reputation, any documentary they make, you got to take with a grain of salt or do your own independent research.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but really, if it's not true, the thing India should do is release their own documentary refuting it.
Yep.
Yeah, the fact that they're asking for it to be banned.
Well, I know. It's just that I'm just saying the BBC isn't any more reliable than the other government because the thing I noticed with a lot of BBC things, because you do mention that this Bodhi guy, he's a conservative, and I'm like, gee, that's funny, I mean, they're gonna dig up all this dirt on a conservative politician, and yeah, a lot of it is legit. But what about the dirt on the other side? Oh, there's no dirt on the other side. It's like that.
It's like the I don't remember his name. The liberal politician that just got elected in Brazil and was the darling of the news media and everyone. Lula, yeah. And it turns out that he's kind of embroiled in all of the crap that's been going on down there too.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think people were always aware that he was always a pretty shady figure.
Well, not to hear the news media talk about him.
Yeah.
Well, another, like, in all honesty, a good example of the BBC being biased is that one documentary they did back in the 1980s where they exposed, where they allegedly exposed the Tory party and they showed all this corruption and Margaret Thatcher's government and all that. And I'm just thinking, well, yeah, that's terrible that's happening, but what about the corruptions and scandals within the Labour Party, which we know for a fact happened? The BBC acts, it's like, what scandals in the Labour Party? There's no scandals in the Labour Party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have things like, I was just looking on the news again, CNN Business, McDonald's, In-N-Out, and Chipotle are spending millions to block raises for their workers. It's raises for their workers. Well, no, it's actually California passed a $22 an hour minimum for fast food employees.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So basically, they're denying raises because it's like we're already being required to pay you $22 an hour. What more?
Well, no, that is the raise they're talking about. It's not a raise; it's a minimum wage. But of course, CNN isn't going to put that in the headline.
Yep.
They're not going to say McDonald's, In-N-Out, and Chipotle are spending millions to save workers who would lose their jobs if this passed.
Yep. Yeah.
Hello, Mr. No.
Of course, there's a.
But yeah, going back to the BBC, the BBC seems to really love hating on the Tories and all that. And listen, for any British people out there, I'm not saying the Tories are clean and all that. I understand there's a lot of crap going on there, but that doesn't mean the Labour Party's any better, Yeah,
they're like the Labour Party's poop don't stink.
Yeah.
Well, like the Brexit stuff. If you watch BBC and that's all you knew about Britain, you would think that like everyone in the country opposed Brexit and somehow they slipped in all these horrible people to, manipulate the vote or whatever. Whereas if you actually talk to British people or you watch, something else like ITV, you get a different picture of it.
Yeah. And I have heard too, like, there's some people that are criticizing Brexit, for the increase in food prices and all that. But I don't know if that's fully true or not. But I've also heard people say that even if it is true, it's not because because Britain can't trade with the EU. It's because the EU basically is saying, okay, if you're not a part of the EU anymore, you don't get subsidized anymore. So now Britain doesn't get artificially cheap stuff. They have to pay market price for it.
Yeah, but they don't have to pay the taxes either.
Yep. But yeah, like I said, that's not what they're looking at. It's like, yeah, they have to pay more for a lot of goods that used to be dirt cheap, but they don't have to pay the taxes for it. And I mean, I literally saw a documentary about Brexit, and it's just like, it's like, listen, people, the reason why people wanted to leave was because they were getting sick and tired of it, and basically they were getting tired of basically being the EU's, the EU's purse, basically.
Well, and it's like if you look at the average everyday average Irishman or German, they really want to be out of the EU, but they're just so locked into it. It's basically a mob.
Yep.
EU is mob territory is what it is.
Also, imagine having two governments ruling over you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is.
Oh yeah, Nigel Farage brought that up, multiple times in British Parliament. It's like why do the British people have to follow the rules of a guy in Brussels who we don't even elect?
Yeah. Yeah, the European Commission is not elected.
Yep.
The European Parliament is, but they just blindly follow whatever the Commission does.
Yep. Yeah, it's the European Union is a good example of good intentions going the bad way, because if I recall correctly, when the European Union was first founded, it was never intended to be like a pseudo government. It was intended to be like a zone, like it was going to be a free market zone where all the European nations could trade with each other. But then, a lot of governments got protectionistic and they say, well, no, we want to keep prices this way or that way. They want to control the prices and imports. So then they formed the European Commission.
And look at how they just kind of blindly go along with like all the crazy copyright stuff that the content cartels want them to pass.
Yep.
They're in their back pocket, people. Hate to break it to you.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, there's I remember, because I have a couple of Norwegian friends on Discord, and like when Brexit was going on, so many people were saying disaster stories of what would happen if Britain leaves the EU, and my Norwegian friends were like, well, Norway's never been a part of the EU, and we're doing just fine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's a vegan knockoff of McDonald's called McCharlie's.
Interesting.
I don't get vegans. It's one, I saw this one vegan do a rant video, and he's like, why are people criticizing me because I'm a vegan and I'm eating these plant-based, hot dogs and burgers and all that? What's wrong with that? Why am I getting criticized for it? It's like, because, it's like you're saying meat is evil and all that, and we shouldn't be eating it, yet you want something that tastes and feels like meat. That's like saying, that's like saying I'm against guns because I abhor the use of violence, but I learned martial arts for self-defense.
Or I want chocolate guns, or I want water guns that look like the real thing or something.
Yeah.
Why do they have to make their food look like our food?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, if they just weren't so insufferable about it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can stand vegetarians, because vegetarians, generally aren't smug about it, and most of the time. And here's another thing too. I noticed too. Most vegetarians, they're vegetarians due to personal health reasons. Vegans are in it for the superiority complex,
or for religious reasons, possibly.
Well, I mean, I'm cool with that if that's your beliefs. Do your thing.
Yeah, but
it's like I say, it's the ones that are just so insufferable about it and trying to push it on the rest of us.
Like, going back to South Park, it reminds me of that episode they did, where the school was going to go vegan, and the vegan kids were arguing, well, we just want to make sure that we have our choices. It's like, no, you're not having a choices. You're forcing everyone to eat the way you want.
Yep.
It's like, nobody is forcing you to eat the food at the cafeteria school. You want to be a vegan? Simple. Go to a supermarket, they have a vegan aisle, and go buy and make your own lunch then.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did that anyway just because I didn't like the school food.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, school cafeteria food. It's like there's all these debates saying your school cafeteria food is not nutritious, and I'm like, to hell with nutrition. I want to know why it tastes like shit.
Yeah. Are these pizzas actually squares of colored cardboard, or do they just taste like it?
Yep.
Is any of this real food? That's always a question I asked.
I mean,
I always wondered if it's like they have this thing called mystery meat. It's like we don't even get to know what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of this joke I once heard. It's called, "What's the difference between a U.S. government public high school and a maximum high security prison? The food's better in prison." No joke. I've actually heard some people that have said, yeah, that when they read that joke, they're like, you know what? I actually agree with that because I did serve time in a prison for for just a minor crime and all that, and I ate at my son's cafeteria because there was like a parent thing going on at the school, and I remember flat out saying, "Man, the crap they served us in the prison was better than this stuff."
But I mean, even down to like the architecture, schools are built like prisons.
Yep.
It's that same model.
I mean, yeah, and I mean, some people were like, schools are not like prisons. Okay, what happens if I decide, you know what, I'm not gonna go to school. I don't want to go to school. I want to stay home and play video games all the time. What happens? They send a cop for you.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. If you
Food
refuse to
prep
go to
class in
school,
elementary school, prepare, cook elegant cook foods, and other classes would be jealous. Yeah,
Mm.
that's cool when you've actually got like they have a classroom that's set up like a kitchen, and you get to learn stuff like that.
Yep.
I'm still here. I'm just going off cam because this chair is not comfortable. I'm going to resituate.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, seriously, schools are like a prison. I mean, you're not allowed to leave. You're not allowed to leave. There's lockdown. They have guards.
Except when it matters and they actually let the school shooter through and then everyone pitches a fit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Just like Uvalde and what was the other one? Sandy Hook, where they didn't even have like locks on their doors.
Oh yeah. To be fair though, even if they did, like even as a kid, I always thought that the lockdown drills were kind of stupid because it's like, and were nothing more than feel good because it's like, okay, how does hiding in the classroom actually protect us? Well, he won't.
Well, it
know.
doesn't. It doesn't if you can't lock the door. That's the point.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, even if you do lock the door, like let's say if somehow the guy does get in and like he has a gun and all that, think about it. People's like, well, he won't know which rooms we're in. Listen, he's breaking in on a school day in the afternoon. There's gonna be people in that school. He knows they're just hiding. It kind of reminds me of that one parent who showed up during a PTA meeting complaining about that, and he says, and here's what I'm going to demonstrate, and then he pulls out a knife, and everyone's freaking out. It's like, I just brought this knife in here. I have no intention to hurt anyone, but imagine if I was, and everyone just kept saying, you can't do that. That's against the rule. It's like, and he kept saying, no, it doesn't matter. If I'm a violent criminal, I already brought this in here. There's nothing you can do to stop me.
Imagine if he did it. Imagine if he did it like a water pistol or something.
Yeah. And and that's all they kept doing. They kept saying, yo, you can't do that. That's against the rule. You need to leave and all that. And he kept bringing that up. He kept saying, well, then answer my question. What are you going to do if a guy sneaks through? Because you can't protect them from everything. There is going to be that one sneaky guy that's going to be able to sneak it through. What are you going to do?
It's just like the people who do that to show problems with, cybersecurity and say, hey, look, everyone, this service that everyone is depending on is not secure, and then the people running it freak out and have the guy arrested.
Yeah. Yeah, back in the 19.
It's like be grateful it was that guy and not someone who really wanted to do harm.
I mean, hell, if I recall correctly, back in the 1990s, because I saw a documentary about this, if you successfully hacked into a program, a lot of computer companies would actually hire you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they say, wow, you found this serious, flaw in our security? Had the hell with giving you a bounty. Why don't you come work for us? Help us make it safer.
I mean, now I think a lot of them are savvy enough that they have their own cybersecurity force. But yeah, they'll do bug bounties. They'll do things like if you contact them and say, hey, I found this problem. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I remember seeing a video of it was like of computer viruses and all that, and there was one destructive computer virus. I cannot for the life of me remember which one it was, but for a long time, everyone thought that it was some terrorist or an evil hacker for profit, and it turns out it was just a guy working for a security company, and he said, "Yeah, I created that virus to test, the security software in our computers, and somehow it got out and it got on the internet." I don't know how it did it, but it happened.
That's the thing you got to be careful when you're developing those things.
Yep. Yeah,
I mean,
if I
yeah,
recall correctly,
when
though-
the government did, like Stuxnet, for example, they made that to attack Iran to try and shut down their nuclear programs, and then it got out and started
Yep.
infecting the rest of us.
Yep. And also the United States military.
And that wasn't
got
the
hacked
only
at one-
time. That was far from the only time.
And also the United States military got hacked that one time because they found a suspicious looking hard drive, and they broke cybersecurity 101, which is if you see a suspicious hard drive and you don't know what it is, don't plug it into your computer. But some guy was like,
Yep.
I wonder what this is. I know, I'll plug it into the computer and see what it is. And it turns
They
out
actually
it was
do. They
spyware.
actually do that thing you saw in that one episode of Mr. Robot, where she just has all these USB sticks with the virus on it, and she's just walking around the parking lot, kind of tossing it in miscellaneous places, and then the security guard looks at it. I wonder what's on this, and plugs it into his computer, and then she owns their network.
Yep. Yeah, that's basic cybersecurity number one. If you don't know if you find a UPS and you don't know what it is, do not plug it in.
Unless you do something like boot into Tails or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I do know, like, there's, like, a lot of computer companies, they do have computers that are set up, that are not connected to the network, and the whole point of them is to test viruses, or if they find a UPS to see, okay, what's on this thing, because that way it'll only affect that computer and not get on the network.
Yeah, I mean, they're completely air-gapped.
Yep. Fun fact, that's actually why, contrary to what the Terminator series says there's no way for Skynet to hack into the nuclear weapons program and launch them all at once, because the computers to the nuclear weapons, they're not connected to the internet.
Well, and a lot of our nuclear reactors for nuclear power are so old, they're running on like DEC mini computers, like PDP-11s.
Yep.
They don't know anything about the internet. They can't run a Windows. Right. The only way you're hacking into that thing is if you get into the room where it is and start pushing buttons.
Yeah. Also, I saw one, U.S. Air Force officer react to Terminator 3's ending, and he does bring up one pretty good point that that Terminator 3 and its sequels never acknowledged, is that even if you could hack into the computers to the nuclear weapons, guess what? In order for them to go boom, they have to be manually armed.
Yeah, and it has to be like two guys. They're more than arm's length together, so you couldn't have one person reaching any plates. And then you have to do that over and over and over again. There's all sorts of safeguards in place.
Yeah, Yeah,
you can just have a piece of software do it.
Yeah. I mean, like, and that's what he pointed out. He pointed out, listen, contrary to what cartoons like to show, the president doesn't have a button that he could push, and cause World War III and blow up the world. I mean, we knew even back in the 1960s that was a dumb idea. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of Dr. Strangelove, was that whole point was why you don't, if you must have nuclear weapons, you don't want it to be automated.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
As it should be for nuclear power, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even with the modern digital systems they have for the modern reactors, they run their own custom OS. They are air-gapped. There is no getting into those. And that was when there was this one thing, the Russians tried to hack our power grid, when what had happened was it was Russian malware, but it might not even have been from the Russian government, but it got on the laptop of someone who worked at the nuclear power facility. But, I mean, there's no way it could have spread to the... They've thought of that, people. Unlike certain others, it wasn't Equifax. Equifax was a few years ago, but another, I think it was Experian, just had a breach.
Yeah.
A lot of people's personal data.
Yep. You don't want it to be too automated, because you don't want the iconic, ooh, what does this button do?
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? I know the perfect way. I saw one funny joke that says, I know the perfect way of how you can protect, the big red button that'll activate all of America's nuclear weapons program. You know what you're supposed to do? Put a sign above it that says, feel free to push the button.
I'd push it anyway. You do that. You just put a big red button there, and the only way I'm not pressing that big red button is if my wife gets to it first.
Yeah.
She would be pushing that big red button, no matter what any sign said.
Yeah. I mean, Family Guy also did that one funny joke one time where it shows a giant room giant room, and it has a single button that says "Do not push." So Peter pushes it, and a guy comes out and punches him in the face. It's like, I told you not to press the button.
That's why it was a little tamer than that, but it's just someone pushes the button and a bunch of light up signs come down with arrows pointing, this guy pushed the button.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, okay.
Oh, you push the button. That means you buy us all lunch.
Yep. You push the button. It goes ding dong. Hey, who rang that bell? Hey, who just rang the doorbell? I did. Can't you read the sign? What sign? Oh, never mind. Here. Bell out of order, please knock. Oh.
Bell out of order. What's that from?
Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah,
They ring the bell to the gate, and the gatekeeper shows up and says, "Why did you ring that bell?" They said, "Well, because we wanted to say hi." It's like, well, I understand that, but can't you read the sign? And then he realizes he forgot to put a sign that says "Bell out of order, please knock." And then they knock, and he says, "That's much better. Welcome to Oz."
But then why did he hear the bell to begin with?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the joke, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, in the film, it's heavily implied that, unlike in the books, it's implied that it's all just, a dream brought on by head trauma Dorothy received from the tornado.
Yeah, whereas in the books, it's definitely a place where she actually went, and she actually goes back several other times in later books and gets involved in the whole socio-political situation.
Also reminds me of Alice in Wonderland, because I saw a video about Alice in Wonderland and how it's the most overanalyzed book ever, because so many people are trying to say, what does this mean? Does this symbolize anything? Even though the author, and it's established multiple times in the novel, that the entire events of all the books is Alice just dreaming. That's the reason why all this crazy, wacky stuff happens and nothing seems to make sense, because think about it. Most dreams don't make sense.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, she's dreaming.
The people were doing that with the Oz books. They were saying, oh, this means that, and he's making this statement of farmers and everything else, and L. Frank Baum was like, no, I'm just writing children's books. Yeah. I still like John Lennon's... What's that, Sid?
People do that with a lot of books. I mean,
well, I like John Lennon's response to that when he learned that, college professors and everyone are having classes where they're, analyzing his lyrics for secret hidden meanings, and so
and then
he wrote "I Am the Walrus" and said, "Let him figure that out."
Yep, and then
it was done specifically to screw with him.
Yep, and then finally they confess. It's like, do you guys really want to know what the secret to "I Am the Walrus" is? And they're like, yeah, tell us. He's like, okay, I took a bunch of drugs and I just wrote what was on my mind at the time. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's not exactly what he said, but that's basically what he said.
Yeah, he just, because it doesn't work to write a song on drugs. You just write down complete nonsense. Yeah. But that was the idea. He took a lot of these nonsense ramblings and stuff like from his dream journal and stuff like that, all these wacky dreams he had. And then when he was sober, he went and put them into lyrics. But, the whole point of the lyrics is they don't make sense.
Yep. It's one band that gets a lot of hate that I don't think it justly gets hate. The Monkees, Oh,
the Monkees were great.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a documentary about the Monkees, and people, and the funny thing is that the band members, I give them kudos. They fought tooth, fang, and nail to be taken as a serious band, because the problem they had was that contrary to what people saw, these people had musical talent. They could sing, they could play instruments, they could write lyrics, but the problem was that the studio was like, yeah, we're just gonna make you a novelty band, just do what we say. It's like,
it wasn't the studio, it was the I forget the guy's name, Don Kirshner or something like that. The guy who was producing the albums.
Yeah.
Was the one who just wouldn't let them have any creative control. And it ended up being not just the Monkees who fought to drum him out, but Screen Gems was like, okay, no, enough. You're out of there.
Yeah.
The guys are going to do their thing.
I mean,
it was like very early on. I mean, it was normal for a band not to play their own instrument on an album, because, I mean, even for bands like, Peter, Paul, and Mary and all that, it was really the Beatles that broke that mold, because there was there was a delineation back then between studio musicians and live musicians. That was a typical thing. But somehow it became like this big scandal with the Monkees. Oh, they didn't play their own instruments, and they were going for there was still the first season was being shown. And there's film of this. They have it. They're trying to follow Mike in as he's going into the backstage in the venue, and they're saying, "Is it true you don't play your own instruments?" And you just turn on like, "I'm about to go in there and play in front of thousands of people. If I don't play my own instruments, I'm in trouble."
Yeah. And I mean, another controversy about the Monkees too is making Davy Jones the lead singer, because if I recall correctly, even Jones himself said, it's like, don't get me wrong, I'm a good singer and all that, but I'm not fit for the role. I should be a drummer,
Well, they were because he was the one who looked the great, and they were trying to make him the idol. But Mike had said if they had done it based on their own talents, it would have been Peter on guitar, Mike on the bass instead of the other way around. Davey on the drums, because he was a really good drummer and you never got to see that, and then Mickey is the front man because Mickey was a great he could work an audience.
Yeah, I mean,
and then in the second season when they took over musical creativity, they needed a producer, and so they got the Chip Douglas, the bass player for the Turtles, and so he started playing bass for them, and that freed up Peter to play keyboards. Yep. Which was really his primary instrument.
Yep.
So, I mean, that was when they really started cranking out some good stuff.
Yeah. Also, and here's another thing, too, because, we all seen that Simpsons episode where Marge gets mocked, because she likes the Monkees instead of the Beatles. Here's a fun fact that not a lot of people want to admit. Well, yes, the Beatles did go on to make many classic original songs. When they first came to the United States, a lot of the songs they were singing were just covers of already established songs.
Well, I mean, that's just what you did. That's just what you did.
Yeah.
Or you had, and that was the Monkees, even after they got creative control, they were still having like Neil Diamond and people like that writing songs for them, Carol Bayer Seeger and Burt Bacharach and people like that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people
that was just what you did. I mean, it was a new idea at that point for an artist to sing, play their own instruments both live and in the studio, and write their own songs. That was a new idea.
Yeah.
Before then, everyone specialized. You had professional songwriters, professional studio musicians, and
we still do that to this day. A lot of famous songs that we all know about, were not written by people that sang them. I mean, I know Frank Sinatra. The majority of the songs he sings were not written by him. They were written by people specifically so he could sing them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it wasn't like the Monkees were covering Neil Diamond songs, because he wasn't really an independent artist at that point. He wrote those songs for the Monkees.
Okay, so I just found out that the song "The House of the Rising Sun" by the Animals was a cover of some traditional folk song from New Orleans.
You can take House of the Rising Sun, Piano Man, Yellow Rose of Texas, and a couple others. Amazing Grace, Joy to the World, and a few others, and also grab most Emily Dickinson poems, and you can jumble them all together, and the different lyrics go with the different songs.
Yep. Kind of reminds me of when, and this kind of goes back to Wizard of Oz, when people discovered that if you take, several of the the dance sequences, from when Dorothy meets the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and all that, and many people discovered the dancing syncs up with a lot of Pink Floyd songs. They flat out they contacted Pink Floyd and say, was this intentional? Were you watching Wizard of Oz so that means something? And them and many musical experts says, no, It's just pure coincidence.
It's not even that much of a coincidence, because if you look at it, it doesn't match a lot more often than it matches. People are kind of cherry picking the parts that match. And Alan Parsons, who produced the album, was like, why the hell would I do that? I'm trying to make an album to sell songs.
Yeah.
Why would I make it to go along with Wizard of Oz?
Yeah. And I especially love how we debunk, the whole reverse message and all that, because it's like,
Yeah.
well, if there's a message clear as the day, how come you have to put lyrics for it to tell what we're supposed to be hearing? Because many musicians have actually put reverse lyrics, and when you play it in reverse, you can hear what they're singing very clearly.
They're still doing that stuff like the EVP and all that on the Ghost Hunter shows. And every time they put the words up on the screen, and the guys, they do this, stupidly exaggerated reactions to make it sound like it's so clear when I bet you anything. If you weren't looking at the screen at the time, you wouldn't be able to make out a word.
I think Oingo Boingo did a song like that one time. I forgot which one it was, but they played a song in backwards, and so many people thought that it was satanic. And then they played it in reverse, and it turns out he's actually begging God for forgiveness. He's praying to God.
He was preaching the gospel. Yeah.
Yeah.
ELO did a similar thing. Yeah.
Yep. I know Weird Al did something like that. I think he made a mock metal song or whatever, and in the background there was this demonic stuff. And if you played it in reverse, he said, "Satan eats cheese whiz." Yeah.
That was oh god, Nature Trail to Hell. Yeah.
Yeah. Funny thing about Weird Al, I saw an interesting video about Weird Al where he was talking about songs that he's performed live, but he'll never release them on an album. And one of them was a parody of the James Bond song "Live and Let Die" called Chicken Pot
Pie. Yeah.
Yep. And they asked him, it's like, that's such a funny song. Why didn't you release it? It's like, well, because even though I'm not required to legally get their permission, out of respect for the original performers, I always ask them, the original producers, can I make your song? And if they say no, I tend to respect that. And Paul McCartney didn't want me to do it.
Even if it's your right to do it, they can still make your life pretty miserable.
Yeah. And the thing is that he asked Paul McCartney, who apparently Weird Al's pretty good friends with, and Paul McCartney's like, "I'm sorry, I'm a strict vegetarian, and I cannot condone a song that promotes eating meat," even though Weird Al himself is also a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, okay. I think he really had a problem, though, with Prince, because Prince just thought he was above all that and was just really so...
Yeah,
Weird Al had some pretty nasty things to say about Prince.
Oh, yeah, that's just mean, yeah. I mean, a lot of musicians, they think... I mean, there was an episode of this old cartoon show called Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which was a cartoon version of Sabrina, and there was an episode where she formed a band, and Weird Al has a cameo in it, and the guy on the announcement says, "You've made it big when Weird Al parodies your songs."
Well, that's what I was about to say. I mean,
a lot of musicians have said, if Weird Al parodies your song, that's a good thing.
Random lateral move. I'd never heard of him. But apparently, someone had the idea to make a quartet of 13-year-old girls cover Devo songs. And it was really weird because it was an interview with Jerry Casale. And so, I mean, if you've got a 13-year-old girl singing, "I got an uncontrollable urge," and they're like, "Oh, what is it?" And I mean, the song doesn't really say, it's like, "I got an uncontrollable urge. I want to tell you all about it. I got an uncontrollable urge. Let me scream and shout it." And the joke of the song is they never tell you what it is. And so they were talking to Jerry Casale about it, and he was like, "Well, this is a problem. We can't do this." And he was like, I mean, he was actually fine with it because having that kind of pop thing is kind of what Devo is all about, de-evolution, that kind of marketing stuff. But they were talking about the song, and he was like, "Well, we never say what the uncontrollable urge is." And they said, "Well, that's the problem. You never say what it is, and everyone's going to assume it's like something bad." And he's like, "Well, just do whatever you want to with it." And then they made it about either pizza or fast food or something like that. And they made it worse.
Yeah, I mean,
they made it so everything was like a euphemism.
I don't know which one it was. It might have been Dana Schneider of Twisted Sisters that pointed this out. It's like, listen, if you're hearing, violent, sexual, whatever stuff, if themes in the song, that's on you, not us.
Yeah. Oh, well, like the whole Louie thing.
Yeah. That's actually what I would say, going back to what you said. If people were saying, well, we can't have 13-year-olds, 14-year-old girls singing that song because if they do, it's going to sound like, like they're saying something, that's not appropriate. I'll just say, buddy, do you have a problem or something? Do you need to see a therapist for a
Yeah.
sexual disorder you might have?
Well, like people reading drug references into Puff the Magic Dragon or
Yeah.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and it's like, okay, you people have problems.
Yeah. I mean, I like how I think it might have been Dana Schneider that said that, but when he said that about Tipper Gore, it's like a lot of the women that were present there, they just like shut up. They're just like, nope, don't say anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he had that, going back to Devo, they had that problem with Whip It, because everyone thinks that song is about masturbation, and it's not. And so he got tired of, in interviews, of going, well, that's about masturbation. So, well, no, actually, it's about the poems in Gravity's Rainbow, and they're supposed to be inspirational, but kind of like those inspirational posters you used to see all the time, how they're kind of superficially inspirational, but they're really of no help whatsoever, and that's what the song's about. And he just got tired of saying that, so he just kind of goes, okay, yeah, it's about masturbation. Yeah, you figured it out. Yeah, you're so clever. Yeah. So he was just tired of having to explain it.
Kind of reminds me of also, I saw this video about this. It was like a short documentary about I don't know if you've heard of it. It was a pro McDonald's movie called Mac and Me. I think you might have heard of it, Shane.
I think I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a cheesy film that was made, basically to promote McDonald's. But one thing that was interesting is that the lead character was a boy in a wheelchair and all that, and the movie did have a cult following. And I think years later he showed up at a convention for fans, who were fans of the cult movie, because it's one of those movies where it's so bad that it's actually kind of funny in a way. And he said, one thing I always hated is that people never took me seriously as an actor, and they always focused on my wheelchair, and they would always ask me, like, what's your story? And I had to deliver this long paragraph about, my medical condition that caused it. And it got so tiring that now every time people do an interview with me and they say, so what's it like? How did you become bound to a wheelchair? I would just say, Vietnam. Yeah. Yeah. Vietnam.
Yeah.
I lost my legs in Nam. I think I saw a joke like that one time too, where there was like a 70-year-old man, and he's in a wheelchair, and someone asked him, how did you lose mobility in your lower body? He says, I lost it while serving in Vietnam. And then the guy's son goes by saying, yeah, he was stationed at an ammo depot in Saigon, and he slipped on a fruit and broke his back. Yeah. Fun fact, I actually remember reading somewhere that says a pretty good chunk of people that win the Purple Heart, they don't actually get wounded in battle. Like, if you get injured, like in a training accident, that can qualify you for an award.
I think it's as long as you draw blood, I think is the criteria.
Yep. That's why if you see that general with all those badges and all that, he says, I have all these badges, that's why I earned my rank. There's a pretty good chance he never actually earned them in combat.
Yeah, most of them are probably for bullshit. Yeah.
Yep, they're either for technical reasons or because they served, for long periods of time. Like literally, the military has rewards for you, and you don't have to do anything other than just stay in the military, be a career military person.
It's like that one episode of Red Dwarf where Rimmer comes out in his full dress uniform, and he's got badges on, and Lister's like, I didn't know you got badges. What were they for? And he points him to goes, 4 years long service, 6 years long service, 8 years long service, 10 years long service.
Yep.
He was the guy who always put his name down, Arnold J. Rimmer, BSc. And BSc stands for Bronze Swimming Certificate.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, I guess we gotta wrap this up, guys. Just a couple minutes to go. If you got any final thoughts. Chat's been kind of quiet. I've been reloading it.
In completely unrelated news, my congressman made a speech made entirely out of AI, so progress.
Cool.
That's funny.
It's fun. I had fun doing the AI quickie.
Fun fact. Going back to politics. We mentioned that governor of Pennsylvania, or I don't know if he's a senator or governor, but the Pennsylvania. And he looks like Thanos. And my girlfriend lives in Pennsylvania, and And she's like, and she was like, yeah, nobody in Pennsylvania liked him. The only reason he won was because for some reason the Republicans thought Dr. Oz would be a good choice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I got a segment on that in the podcast. Fetterman, how do you lose to Fetterman?
Yeah. Well, I think I brought this up in an early live stream, but I'm going to say it again because it needs to be alliterated. It's just like, it's just like what happened in the 2012 Olympic. A lot of people were sick of Obama and his hypocrisy and lies, and they were more than willing to take anything else. And the Republican parties, they had the victory on a silver platter. And what did they do? Let's see here. We've got all these candidates that people are actively supporting, and there's even internet wars over on. I know. Let's pick Mitt Romney, who's not mentioned in any of those debates, and nobody likes him.
Yeah. Yeah, that was basically giving it up.
Yep.
Of course, if you lose, I guess you can always go to the World Economic Forum. I was seeing there are clips from John Kerry, and they're saying all this crap about stuff he knows nothing about, and I'm watching it going, didn't you lose?
Yeah.
George W. Bush, whose popularity was declining thanks to the Iraq War.
Yep.
Yeah, anyway.
Well, actually, I think it was still the height of his popularity was in 04. Because, I mean, the Republicans the turnout of the Republicans was incredible in 04.
You gotta get, say what you want about him. You gotta give George W. Bush some credit. I like how that guy, like a politician, he was so base, like he did not care, and I kind of wish we see that with a lot of politicians because there are so many snowflakes in politics now. Like you make a joke about them, they're like, "This guy threatened me." Bush was the type where he just make a quib at you,
Yeah.
Like I remember during I remember during that one debate, I think it was with Al Gore. Al Gore was trying to intimidate him by getting into his face, and Bush responded by looking at him saying, "Oh, hi, can I help you?"
Oh no, he didn't even say anything. He just nodded.
Yeah.
Al Gore was and Gore was like pushing out his chest, like trying to be threatening everything. He just looked at him and nodded, and then went on.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people fail to realize, like, there's so many people that are like, oh, Bush was so stupid. Look at all these bloopers he made during his speech. But I've actually heard from one of his campaign managers say Bush would deliberately do that. He would deliberately, act stupid or flub up. It was basically his way of saying, "See, I'm just like one of you people. I can make fun of myself and all that."
Oh yeah, or like when they tried throwing their shoes at him and he ducked.
Yeah.
I will
say one of the best comebacks from a politician being personally attacked came from Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was governor, because someone threw an egg at him, and during a post interview they asked Arnold Schwarzenegger, if you could have that guy right here right now, what would you say or do to him? He basically said, I would force that guy to cook me some bacon because I can't have eggs without bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I will say
go ahead.
Yeah. I was about to say he acted tough for the wars. You know what? What's one criticism of George W. Bush I don't get is how he reacted when he was told the Twin Towers were acting, and he was acting all calm and all that, and people were like, "Oh, that's bad. He's not doing anything." It's like, he was in a room reading books to children. What was he supposed to do?
Yeah. Was he supposed to run around screaming, go, "Oh my God, we're all gonna die"?
Yeah, yeah. Was he supposed to act?
They were just informing him. They weren't expecting him to do anything. They were just giving him updates on what was happening, and probably assuring him that they had everything. They didn't need him at the moment, but And
the funny thing is that historically speaking, when it comes to the view of the president, that's how you're supposed to react, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. You're supposed to not react. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's leave it there. We finally got this with just a few days in the month to go. Hopefully next month will go more smoothly. So
okay.
Thanks, Chris and Sid, for joining me.
Okay.
Thanks for all the commenters. We had Captain Pipsqueak, Mr. No, we had Dana, Scorch. Who else was up there towards the top? INDU, SPC. All right, we'll see you, Sid.
Yep.
All right. Thanks everyone for watching.